You are listening to A Scary State, and this week we are covering Massachusetts. So, Nora.
Yes, Lauren.
Let's get scary.
Okay.
Well, hello, everyone.
Hi.
It always feels so long that we record because now we go every 2 weeks, as we've been doing for a little bit. So I just feel like there's so much stuff that happens.
Yeah, and then we have like our little catch-up session before.
That takes like an hour.
Yeah.
Before.
This time no wine was involved, though.
Yes, no wine this time, though it was needed. So as we're recording this, I celebrated my birthday yesterday.
Yeah.
It was very fun. Joe and I got sushi at like 8 o'clock at night because we couldn't find a place to go.
Aww.
But we found a place, and I think we have our sushi place.
That's awesome.
It's very exciting.
Near your new house?
Yes, near our new place.
That's awesome.
But yeah, so we're celebrating this weekend, which will be a lot of fun, and we're being COVID safe as always.
Mm-hmm.
And Nora, where are we going next week?
Punta Cana.
Ooh!
I'm so excited.
I'm really excited too. I don't think it's like hit yet that we're going, and I don't think it will until I actually step on like the island.
I know.
And then I'll be like, okay, we're here.
I know.
We're all safe.
I
good.
mean, I still need to pack.
Oh, I haven't
I still
packed
need
yet.
to do so much stuff, but you know what? I'm just going to let it happen. I'm just going to
Just
ride with the
gonna let it
waves.
happen.
I know, right? I did it on purpose. But yeah, you know, this is my first time traveling since COVID started calming down. So I'm so pumped.
The last trip I went on internationally was in 2015.
Mine
so
was
it's
like
been a
2018,
while.
But still, that's so long.
Yeah.
Both times so long. 15.
And for people who are worried, we're taking all the COVID precautions. We're doing everything we have to do. We're being super safe. So
the resort's super safe.
Yes,
so
which makes
that's
me
a huge thing.
feel a lot better.
Yeah. So.
And then we're also, I know a lot of podcasts have talked about this, but the current stuff going on in the news with Ukraine. We just want to let people know, and I guess let all of our listeners know, that we stand by you. We're here to support you. This is absolutely horrible. And I can't even imagine what everyone's going through.
Yeah. It's heartbreaking. And just know that the U.S. is paying attention and we are here and with open arms. Like so many people like care and want everything to be okay. So.
Yeah. So hopefully, you know, some compromise can be found where there's no more violence and no more, you know, all the bad stuff that's going on. So we just want to let our listeners know that, you know, we're here. We see you. We're supporting you.
We love you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now to get into the scary things.
Yes.
Nora, tell us about Massachusetts.
Okay. Massachusetts, nicknamed the Bay State, joined the Union on January 6, 1788, and became the sixth state. Massachusetts got its name from Massachusetts tribe, whose name meant near the Great Hill. It is believed this hill they're referring to is Blue Hill. Some weird laws in Massachusetts. It's illegal to give beer to a hospital patient.
Good. I mean, beer is probably the last thing they should be drinking.
Snoring is prohibited unless all of the bedroom windows are closed and locked.
Huh.
I can think of people who snore, and honestly, that should be illegal. I agree with that one.
Yeah, I think we might be thinking of one of the same people.
I think so.
And oh my gosh, every time someone snores, I like try to kick them so they stop, and it stops for like a couple seconds, and you close your eyes, and it happens again.
I know.
Joe snores if we go out drinking. The night we come back home, he snores, or if he's really, really tired. And it's so annoying. So I'll like hit him, and he's like, what? I was like, you were snoring. And he's like, no, I wasn't. I was like, yes, you were. And it makes me so annoyed.
See, Ian's the opposite, to where I could literally roll over in the middle of the night and be like, hey, Ian. And he'll respond. Like, I'm like, were you even sleeping? He's like, yeah, I'm a light sleeper. I'm like, how did you wake up to that?
I mean, that's good to know if anyone like, you know, breaks into your house, or if Ellie needs you immediately or something.
Yep, that's true. If you want to wear a goatee, you must pay a special license fee. Otherwise, it's illegal.
I mean, I can't say I'm mad about that.
I can't say I'm mad either. This next one I think you would be mad at. Tattoos and body piercings are illegal.
Yeah, I got a few tattoos. I also have a consultation for one of my new tattoos coming up.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
What is it?
It's the hawk that I want to get.
Oh.
It's in honor of my grandpa who passed away.
Oh.
So the story with that real quick is that after he passed away, I'm not kidding when I tell you, every day I would see 3 to 7 hawks a day. And that's like a lot.
Yeah.
And so now I see at least one a day, and this has been going on for over a year. So
Wow.
I was like, I think that's our little like connection, so I'm getting a hawk.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so I have a
love that.
consultation soon to go over like what I want, to draw up the design, and I'm really, really excited.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, just don't go to Massachusetts. Well, it's too late anyways.
Yeah.
You have other tattoos.
I didn't plan to anyways.
If you're in Boston, you cannot cross the Boston Common without carrying a shotgun. Why? In case there's a bear.
Sound logic.
Yeah. Their official state flower is the Mayflower, which is so fitting. And Lauren said, I had no idea that was a flower.
I didn't know
I
it was
thought
like
it
an
was just
actual
the shit
flower.
that came.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
But I guess it's an actual flower.
Interesting. The first Dunkin' Donuts ever opened was in Quincy, Massachusetts. That's cool.
Interesting. I knew they ran on Dunkin', but I don't like Dunkin' Donuts. I will say it. I'm sorry to all of our like New England people. I don't like it. I'm a Starbucks fan all the way.
I definitely like Starbucks better, but I had a Dunkin' phase where I would go way more often than I should admit. So yeah.
Joe's from Massachusetts, as I've mentioned. If he's the one who's like getting our coffee or breakfast or whatever, he'll get Dunkin'. But if I had my choice, it's Starbucks.
Yeah.
I apologize.
I agree. How basic do we sound right now?
Oh my God. Talking about coffee.
Massachusetts is home to Salem. And you've been there.
Yes, they have.
Famous for the witch trials that took place in 1692.
Jeez. And I don't think either of us are talking about the witch trials tonight.
No, actually.
I just know it's a very common thing. Like, not a common thing, like a very popular thing that people talk about. And so with us, we know that we like to cover things that people might not super know about. So,
yeah, but don't worry. It's just as disturbing, my story, as the witch trials.
Good.
Massachusetts.
This is my favorite fact.
Oh boy, I hate you already for this. Massachusetts has a lake with the longest name ever. It's the longest name of a place in the U.S. and the 6th longest in the world. Many just refer to it by its nickname, which is Webster Lake. Its real name is 45 letters long. Okay, here we go. Lake Chargog Gagog Manchao Gagod Shambug Hamamambug.
Amazing.
All of these letters are displayed in the town sign.
Yeah.
That is insane.
Wild?
Like, imagine trying to teach a kindergartner how to spell their town name.
Oh my gosh. I had Joe, when we first started dating, he was able to say this name like perfectly. He can't say it anymore.
Oh my gosh.
But one of the games we like to play is we'll drive through Massachusetts, and I'll see a state or like a town name, and I'll try to pronounce it, and we'll see how close I get to pronouncing it right. Because Massachusetts has the names and towns and cities and whatever that don't look like how they're spelled. You can look up on YouTube and you can like have someone read it to you, and it's just the weirdest thing.
Ugh, that's wild.
Yeah.
It is said that the Freetown Fall River State Park may be the most haunted forest in America.
And we will get to it.
The Lollipop Graveyard is located in Harvard, which is an actual town name. The grave makers, all 300 of them...
Markers.
Oh, the grave markers, all 300 of them look like lollipops. It's also said to be very haunted, mainly haunted by a ghostly woman in the woods who sings in a very low voice.
I don't like that.
I do not either.
I don't like that at all.
Massachusetts is home to some books that are actually bound in human flesh. Why does that not surprise me? After reading my story, I'm like, Massachusetts.
Yeah, Massachusetts is wild.
It's also where Morbid is from.
Yeah.
The 2 girls from Morbid, and the 2 girls from 2 Girls, 1 Ghost.
One lives near Boston, and I think the other was there, but is in now Well, she was like from New Jersey, and now she's in California.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but still,
big podcasters. These books are held at the Boston Athenaeum. Yes. The book Narrative of the Life of James Allen, alias Jonas Pierce, alias James A. York, alias Burley Grove, the Highwayman, being his deathbed confession to the warden of the Massachusetts State Prison, is an autobiography of a local criminal.
So that's like the whole title of the book.
That's the title?
Yes, from narrative to state prison.
Okay, let me read it one more time. The narrative of the life of James Allen, alias Jonas Pierce, alias James H. York, alias Burley Grove, the Highwayman, being his deathbed confession to the warden of the Massachusetts State Prison.
Yep.
How does that fit?
I don't know.
It's an autobiography of a local criminal. His last wish before his execution in 1837 was that this book be bound in his own skin, and his wish was granted.
Gross.
What?
Gross.
The feel of this book is described as having a slightly bumpy texture, like soft sandpaper.
That's even grosser, and I hate that.
Massachusetts has 5 known serial killers.
So we already know that Massachusetts is wild.
Yeah.
The skin-bound book, though, reminds me of, like, Book from, Hocus Pocus. Like,
yeah, that does actually.
Yeah. And then
it's so funny, yeah.
And then it's up in Massachusetts anyways, so maybe they, hit the table. Maybe they got inspiration from that guy's book.
I know.
I don't know.
That's
All
a good
right.
point.
So, like I said, Freetown Fall River State Park is a wild place that we're going to get to, and that's what I'm going to talk about today.
Yay.
So in Massachusetts, it's an area of more than 5,000 acres that holds many spooky, scary, and creepy tales, also known as the Freetown Fall River State Park, or more commonly known as the Freetown State Park. And so, like I said, we like to cover things that people don't know a ton about. So I asked Joe if he knew of this place, and he did. But I asked if he knew of any of the creepy things that happened, and he did not.
Huh.
So I was like, all right, that's what we're going to do. So this park offers a lot. There are roads and trails to hike, bike, ski, dog sled, and off-road. Around 50 miles or 80 kilometers of paved roads and different trails. Lots of different activities. There is also a picnic area, brooks, and streams. So it seems like a nice family park.
Yeah.
But not everything has been peachy keen in this area.
Dang it.
This park has all the things we talk about. So cryptids, hauntings, true crime, literally all of it, and I'm going to touch on a lot of those.
Yay.
And people have many different explanations for why this area is so haunted and full of dark and evil energy. One of these explanations being that the forest has been associated with the Bridgewater Triangle. So real quick, this triangle is an area of land with Abington, Rehoboth, and Freetown making its corners. The area is said to be full of paranormal phenomena, including UFOs, cryptid sightings like Thunderbirds, Pukwudgies, Bigfoot, poltergeists, humanoid creatures, cult activities to include animal mutilations and curses. So literally there are so many things and creatures in this triangle that we could do another full episode on each of these individual things.
Oh, sorry. That's our food, I think.
Just chilling here waiting for Nora. Did you get your milkshake?
Yeah.
Nice.
I know.
What kind did you get?
Vanilla.
Nice.
I like vanilla shakes.
I do too.
I always get teased for it because people are like, that's so boring. I'm like,
But when it's a shake, though, it tastes good.
yeah, it's so good.
Because I can't eat just vanilla ice cream, but I could definitely have just a
Yeah.
vanilla shake.
Yeah, same here.
So there are so many things and creatures in this triangle that we could probably do a full episode on every single creature and thing.
And maybe we will on one of them.
Maybe. But because of that, that's why I decided to narrow it down to just the forest and not the whole triangle. So we will say our food got here a lot earlier than it was supposed to. So now Nora has a milkshake, and I have iced tea and lemonade. So if you hear a little clinking in the background, it's us enjoying our drinks.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the creatures, though, that is commonly spotted in the forest is the Pukwudgie. And I wanted to talk about this weird creature a little. So there's literally so much information about this creature, and it's really, really wild.
I've never heard of it before.
Ooh, okay.
It's wild, literally. Sorry, my shake is putting me on a high right now.
After your 3 sips.
I know.
Okay, so they come from the Wampanoag folklore and are considered to be spirits of the forest. They are small creatures who measure to be 2 to 3 feet tall, or 61 to 91 centimeters, and have human-like features, but their noses, fingers, and ears are elongated. Their skin is typically smooth and gray, and they have been known to glow.
That's like Dobby.
Oh, yeah, a little bit
Yeah.
like Dobby. But Dobby's nice.
Mm-hmm.
So these creatures sound lovely, and to go along with their wonderful appearances, it is actually reported that they do have a sweet floral scent. So these
Aw.
little nasty creatures running around the woods smell nice. So these things have some weird traits and abilities, and I got this list from Cryptids with a Z fandom. So they can appear and disappear at will. They can transform into a walking porcupine. So it looks like a porcupine from the back, and the front is half troll, half human, and walks upright.
Ugh.
They can attack people and lure them to their deaths. They are able to use magic. They have poison arrows. They can create fire at will. And they control the Tepe-Wonkas, which are believed to be the souls of Native Americans that they have killed.
They sound cute.
Yeah. So thank you, Cryptids fandom. They can also shapeshift into dangerous animals like cougars and have the ability to turn themselves into a combination of creatures.
That's cool.
I had a feeling you were going to say something about the cougars. I saw you like.
Oh, no, I was like, that's pretty cool.
They can also look half human and half porcupine if they so desire. So how did these creatures even come to be? Well, I will tell you.
Okay.
The Wampanoag believed that a creature called the Mashop, who was said to have created most of Cape Cod, fun fact, the Mashop was beloved by the Native Americans, which made the Pukwudgies jealous. So eventually the Pukwudgies turned on the humans and became mischievous and tried to torment the humans. This bothered and aggravated the Native Americans, so they went to Granny Squawnit, who was Mashop's wife, and asked for help against the Pukwudgies. Mashop collected as many as he could, shook them until they were confused, and threw them all over New England. Some died from this incident, but others landed, their confusion disappeared, and they made their way back to Massachusetts. So Mashop, believing that he did a good job, went away for a while. But in the time that he was away, the Pukwudgies made their way back to Massachusetts, and they were no longer just annoyances, they were dangerous.
Ooh.
They began kidnapping children, burning villages, and taking people into the woods and killing them. So Squawnit tried to help, but again, Mashop, being lazy at this point, sent his 5 sons to take care of them instead. Well, the Pukwudgies weren't ready to be taken down and were able to lead the 5 sons into deep grass, where they proceeded to shoot the 5 sons with magic arrows, killing each one. Squawnit and Mashop were enraged and attacked many of the Pukwudgies, but many were able to get away. The ones who got away regrouped and tricked Mashop into the water, where they also shot him with the arrows. So some stories say that he died by the arrows, but other stories say that he wasn't led to the water and killed. Instead, he became so depressed and discouraged after the death of his sons that he just faded away.
Aww.
But weirdly enough, this is actually where he started to disappear from Wampanoag mythology, like, overall.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of interesting that he either was killed or disappeared, and then he just never showed up again in their mythology.
Yeah.
So Native Americans believe that these Pukwudgies should be left alone, and that if you actually see one, you should not mess with them, because if you do, they are known to repay you by playing nasty tricks on you or following you around and causing trouble. Their nasty tricks include being stalked by them, having your memories forgotten, or even meeting an untimely death. But they weren't always bad. Like I said, at one time, the Pukwudgies were nice to humans and they all got along, but then they turned against the humans. So they've also been known to push humans off cliffs, kidnap them, attack them with knives and spears, convince them to commit suicide, and even use sand to blind them.
Oh my gosh. So they, like, psychologically mess with people too.
Yeah, like they're just bad little
Yeah.
things. So there have been a few notable Pukwudgie sightings. One man named Tom claims to have seen one. He had first encountered one of these creatures when he was a teenager. He had snuck out of his parents' house one night and decided to take a walk through the woods to clear his mind. As he was walking down a path in the woods, he saw a glowing light. He said it was a dim light, which was in the form of a ball. It was white and swelled. He described that it sort of looked like it was breathing. It rose to the height of his shoulders and then flew into the woods. So being a teenage boy, he decides to follow the light down the path until it disappeared. At this point, he decided to return home, and as he turned around to do so, he realized that he wasn't alone. He saw a short man covered entirely in fur up ahead of him. He described him as being about 2 feet tall and had a nose like a wolf. The creature turned and ran back to the trees after releasing an unearthly moan. But that wasn't the only time that Tom encountered one of these creatures. Later on, also at night, Tom drove to a parking lot in the forest and sat in his car. In order to enjoy the solitude, he turned off his engine and his headlights and turned the radio down low. But soon he realized that, again, he wasn't alone. Standing in front of his car was the same creature he had seen before. It was standing about 20 feet away, and Tom could see that it had glowing red eyes. Suddenly, his car started on its own, and the radio started blaring. Startled and in a panic, Tom immediately left and drove home. So that was his experience with the Pukwudgies. One of the other most famous stories happened to a lady named Joan back on a spring day in the 90s. She was walking her dog on a path that meandered through the forest, a path she had walked many, many times before. Well, all of a sudden, her dog took off running into the woods. Joan chased after her dog and finally caught up to it. When she caught her breath and lifted her head, she realized that she was face to face with one of these creatures.
Oh my gosh.
She described it as being about 2 feet tall with pale gray skin and short, stocky legs. It had hair on its arms and the top of its head. Its torso made up a majority of its body. It had deep green eyes, large lips, a canine-like nose, and a human-like face. Neither Joan, the creature, or her dog moved. They all just continued to stare at each other until suddenly her dog began pulling her back to the path they had been walking on. She tried to forget about the startling experience, but it became clear that that's not what the Pukwudgie wanted. Later that night, and for many weeks to follow, the creature would appear outside of Joan's bedroom window in the middle of the night. It would then proceed to try to wake her up by tapping on her window.
Oh my god.
In the middle of the night.
Absolutely not.
So this continued on for weeks until she finally moved away. That's the only way that it stopped. Police in the area have actually gotten so many calls and reports of Pukwudgie sightings that they've erected a Pukwudgie crossing sign near the Freetown State Forest. So there's legit a sign that says, like, Pukwudgie crossing.
Oh my god.
They've appeared in works of fiction as well. A poem written by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow in 1855 titled The Song of Hiawatha mentioned the mischievous Pukwudgies. J.K. Rowling, we don't support her views, but we support Harry Potter,
Mm-hmm.
also talked about the Pukwudgies in the Harry Potter universe. They represent one of the houses in the Ilvermorny School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, which is like the Hogwarts of North America.
Oh.
So this house is said to represent the heart of a wizard and favors the healers. So best to avoid these creatures should you come upon them.
I will.
Yeah.
I will avoid them.
We just won't even go to this creepy forest in the first place.
Exactly.
So Native Americans in this area have another explanation for all the weird and darkness that they experience in the forest, which would require a bit of a backstory. So in 1659, Freetown was purchased from the Wampanoag tribe, the tribe who was native to the area, and it later became an actual town in 1693. The tribe considered this area to be sacred, and when Wamita, the one who actually sold the land, ended up selling it, it was surmised that his tribe wasn't behind the selling of the land and were not pleased with this transaction. So the evil energy in this area is believed to date back before the purchase occurred, but it is believed that this purchase seemed to transfer any curse from the Wampanoag to the settlers. So I will soon get into the evil and horrible events that have occurred in this forest. It is believed that these events have turned the once gentle spirits into violent and vengeful entities who continue to attract more evil and continue to grow stronger through that evil.
No.
Both psychics who have visited the forest and Native Americans who still live around here feel that these crimes and hauntings and dark things will continue to happen and will not stop until the tribe gets their land back. So today, a good thing is that a majority of the forest is dedicated to a forest reserve, and part of that is dedicated to the Wampanoag Reservation. Open tribal meetings are held, and the area acts as a sort of meeting area for different tribes. So back to the forest, also known as the Cursed Forest of Massachusetts, and the not-so-peachy keen things that have happened here. In September of 1980, a fire tore through the forest, burning approximately 230 acres over the course of a week.
Oh, no.
Then, fires in 1988 and 1991 burned around 100 acres. Another one in March of 1976 burned 500 acres. And the last major fire occurred on April 30th, 2001, which burned 90 to 100 acres.
Wow.
Hazardous waste was dumped in the forest in 1996. In 2006, there were reports of aggressive abandoned dogs running around. And also in 2006, there were reports of an escaped emu wandering the forest.
Are you kidding me?
So it's just a weird place. And they have definitely had some dark things that have happened in this forest. So I'm going to go over one of these really infamous cases linked to this forest. So in November of 1978, Mary Lou Arruda's body was found tied to a tree in the park. Have you heard of her?
Mm-hmm.
You have? Yeah. So Mary Lou Arruda was born on September 8th, 1963, and the oldest child in her family. Mary, her mother and father, and 3 siblings all lived in Raynham, Massachusetts, which is 32 miles or 51 kilometers south of Boston. On September 9th, 1978, on her 15th birthday, Mary Lou was riding her bike around her neighborhood. She was seen riding around 4 p.m. Later that day, around 4:30 p.m., a local neighbor boy found Mary Lou's bike and returned it to her mother, who then immediately proceeded to call the cops. The bike had been found on the side of the road near a skid mark and a cigarette. A search began immediately with police, dogs, and volunteers searching for Mary Lou. After days, it had appeared that she had just disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
A witness eventually came forward and was able to place an unfamiliar green vehicle in the area of the day that Mary Lou went missing. A sketch was even developed off of this sighting. For 2 months, no signs of Mary Lou and no information about her disappearance came forward, until November 11th, 1978. A dirt bike rider had been riding in the Freetown State Forest and found Mary Lou's body. She was fully dressed and tied to a tree in a standing position. So this is horrible, but experts believe that she was still alive when she was tied to the tree.
Oh.
So the poor baby girl was probably left there alone and scared. So cause of death was ruled to be strangulation by ligature or positional asphyxiation. So it's believed to have occurred with how she was tied. It was around her neck, and as she got tired, she could no longer stand. So immediately, a man named James Cater became a prime suspect. Cater was 31 years old and worked at a local donut shop in Broxton. He drove a bright green 1976 Opel with a black racing stripe, so a very unique car.
Yeah.
Cater was also known to smoke, and he had just so happened to smoke the same type of cigarette that was found at the crime scene. And I don't know how this part makes him a suspect, but apparently on the day after Mary Lou first went missing, Cater got married to his 18-year-old fiancée, so a 13-year age difference, and left the country for their honeymoon. So a 13-year age difference wouldn't be a big deal, except if your fiancé is 18 years old.
Yeah.
So when Cater was eventually questioned, he provided an alibi, saying that he had been running errands all over town on the day that Mary Lou went missing. But police were quickly able to dismiss this alibi by proving that he wasn't where he said he was when he said he was. Witnesses also claimed that they had seen Cater driving around Mary Lou's neighborhood on the day she went missing, and around the forest where her body was eventually found. He was seen driving, a bright green car.
Oh my gosh.
So in December of 1978, James Cater was arrested for the kidnapping and murder of Mary Lou Arruda. But this wasn't the only time that he was involved in the courts. In February of 1969, Cater was facing a very similar crime, one in which he actually pled guilty to. On June 22nd, 1968, 13-year-old Jacqueline Boussier was walking her bike in her neighborhood when she was abducted. Her captor forced her into the car, and she was driven 20 minutes away into a forest. That captor was, you guessed it, Cater. Well, in the woods, he forced Jacqueline into a kneeling position in front of a stream, where he hit her in the back of the head with an iron bar. After this, Cater forced her head underwater. She resisted and tried to fight back, knocking off Cater's glasses in the process. She tried to escape, but he was able to get her back into his car and continue to drive further into the woods.
Oh my gosh.
I know. He found a tree and tied the young girl to the tree at the ankles, knees, and torso. For 20 minutes, Cater paced in front of the tree and in front of Jacqueline, then pulled a tie out. He walked up behind the girl, put the tie around her neck, and started pulling, strangling her.
No.
The next thing she knew, Jacqueline was waking up, still tied to the tree. She managed to untie herself and escape,
Oh my gosh.
I know. He was convicted, and in February of 1969, he pled guilty. He was sentenced and sent to jail until he was released in January of 1976, which was just 2 years before he abducted and murdered Mary Lou.
Wow.
But he tried to fight the Arruda murder I'm going to have a sip of my tea.
Mm-hmm.
But he tried to fight the Arruda murder conviction. He had 4 separate trials and made many, many appeals. His fourth trial went from 1996 to 2000. None of this did anything, and his life sentence was upheld. Duh. He was to serve his sentence at MCI Shirley, but unfortunately, he wouldn't be serving the sentence rotting behind bars because on January 9th, he was transferred to Shattuck Hospital for treatment, and on January 23rd, 2016, he died of cancer, after only serving 38 years behind bars for the horrific murder of Mary Lou Arruda.
Wow.
But there have been many other things that have made many, including law enforcement, to speculate that cults and satanic activity have occurred in these woods. During that time of Satanic Panic, so the 70s and 80s, there was a spike of sinister cult activity seen in the forest. Police found many pieces of evidence that supported these claims of cult activity. One of these pieces of evidence was when police found an underground bunker in the forest that had apparently been used for different cult rituals and possibly even human sacrifice. One popular story occurred in the 1980s. A bog worker owned a shack in the woods. He contacted the police about trespassers on his property who would converge on his shack dressed in black robes. The police came to investigate and found a large pentagram on the ground, as well as some sort of design that was made up of carefully and precisely placed stones. Well, the pentagram was immediately removed and all of the stones were thrown back into the forest. Authorities showed up at the same area the next day, and another pentagram had been drawn exactly where the first had been, and all of the stone formations were placed back exactly how and where they were the previous day. Satanists and cults are said to favor this area because of the vibe of being in the dark woods, but also for the undercurrent of dark energy that the forest has. They believe it helps them tap into this power, and they use it during rituals and sacrifices. So some other horrible things. So trigger warning for newborn death. So if you don't want to hear this, skip ahead like 15, 30 seconds. So in 1983, a newborn baby was found in a trash can at a rest stop at a highway that runs along the border of the forest. In 1987, and their words, drifter, from a nearby town was found murdered in the forest after being mistaken for an undercover police officer, which he was not.
Wow.
Apparently, the following year, in 1998, 2 men were shot multiple times. Their bodies were found in the forest. There might have been a dispute between them over a girl, but I could not find the story at all. In that same year, a body had been dug up from a nearby cemetery. In 1991, a man reported being assaulted in the forest. Then in 1998, a woman reported the same thing. Also in 1998, a young boy was found naked and beaten. That same year, many cows and a group of calves were found mutilated in the forest, and local cops linked these mutilations to a satanic cult and a ritual that they may have performed. Then in 2001, 2 men were found dead on Bell Rock Road. So it just seems there are a lot of instances of, like, violence and death and creepy stuff.
Really, like, way more, like, I'm sorry, but you're not seeing that kind of stuff in forests around here.
Right.
Or hearing about it.
Yeah.
Like, it's just way
So
more
there's
than average.
something there.
Yeah, there's something going on, like an off balance or something.
So we've covered our cryptids, we've covered our true crime, now we've got
Yeah.
some hauntings.
Yay!
So most of the hauntings that occur in and around the forest are harmless for the most part. One is the haunted police station that is located in Freetown. So the story goes that one night, a dispatcher died while on duty. She was known for working the night shift and being the one to send police out on their calls. Well, the police on duty just assumed that it was a slow night, so they weren't getting many calls. As shift changed the next morning, her body was found. Since that incident, officers have reported seeing a cloudy figure walking through the office. The cloudy figure was never seen before the woman's death, so many officers attribute it to being her. But some other hauntings may not be so harmless. Many who have entered the forest, especially at night, have reported the strong feeling of being watched. There are paths through the forest that seem just large enough for a car to fit through, but many, many people know to not drive them at night. Duh.
Yeah.
One person who decided to drive one of these paths at night kept seeing someone outside of his window as he was driving, so this kind of creeped him out, so he sped up. But at this point, the dark figure stepped out into the woods and kept up with the man's car with very little effort until it all of a sudden disappeared. Other cars have broken down here or have had their lights mysteriously go out. Another group was walking down the woods, just having a grand old time and joking around, but all of a sudden they saw a person walking towards them. So this must have spooked them as they ran back to their car. But as they were approaching their car, they saw an old woman walking straight at them, quote, like a zombie.
No.
She was covered in dirt as if she had been buried.
Ew.
She walked up to the car and tried to reach in. But I guess she didn't get in, and the group was able to drive away, right?
I don't care if you're old.
So this forest also has an area known as Astronaut Ledge, or more commonly known as the Ledge. So it's an 80-foot or 24-meter deep rock quarry. So trigger warning for brief mention of suicide here. But this forest has been known for the amount of suicides that are committed and completed here, but the ledge is the most common area for this to happen. One man completed suicide here in front of his girlfriend. And I know mental illnesses can be hidden and people can try to mask it, but his girlfriend said that he never once showed signs of depression or anxiety before entering the forest. Some who have entered the forest and have approached the ledge have reported a sudden feeling of guilt, and they described it as if a black cloud is hanging over them as they got closer to the ledge. One man who was out fishing in the pond below the ledge said that he witnessed 6 or 7 people coming straight down it. The figures disappeared and reappeared in different places, so I assume these are ghosts of people who have lost their lives. There are actually many reports of people being below the ledge and seeing someone jump off only to disappear just before they hit the water below. And some also see people just ominously standing at the top. And of course, there have been reports of Satanists and strange cults meeting on this ledge.
Because of course.
Of course. So this ledge is also the site of a UFO sighting that occurred in 1974 by Ronald Reagan. At the time of this sighting, he was serving as the California governor. So in 1974, Reagan was in a Cessna flying over the ledge with his pilot, who was an Air Force Colonel Bill Patener, and 2 of his Secret Service personnel. As they were flying, they noticed a strange light following their little plane. All within the span of a few minutes, the strange lights would accelerate, decelerate, and become elongated. Then all of a sudden, at a very high speed, it shot upwards at a 45-degree angle and disappeared. So Reagan reported this to Norman C. Miller, who was the Washington bureau chief of the Wall Street Journal. So I did look into this, and some people say that it couldn't have possibly happened because he wasn't flying over Massachusetts at that time. Other people say it did happen. So because it's spooky, we're just going to believe it happened.
Yeah, we're just going to tell it.
Exactly. So another ghost known in the forest is the ghost of the Profile Rock, also known as Joshua's Mountain. So the Profile Rock was a huge rock like 50 feet, 15 meters high, that once stood intact and at the time literally looked like the profile of a man. But unfortunately, in 2019, a large portion broke off after years of being vandalized. So according to Wampanoag legend, the rock is the image of Wampanoag chief Massasoit, and is also the location where this chief's son died. The tribe held this rock as a sacred place. But anywho, the ghost of this rock is said to be a man who sits cross-legged on top of it. He has actually been seen by many hikers who have come to look at the rock.
Like a yoga guy?
Yeah, that's what I picture.
Yeah.
Just like chilling on his rock.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another strange phenomena that occurs at or near this rock is a strange glowing disembodied voice, orbs of light, and sinister apparitions.
Nope.
I know.
That's not peaceful yoga guy activity.
That would not be a peaceful yoga activity at all. And another spooky place in these woods is the Hakamak Swamp. So this swamp covers a huge area, like a large part of the northern part of southeastern Massachusetts. Weird directions, but it is the largest freshwater swamp in the whole state at 16,950 acres. So the name Hakamak comes from the Wampanoag people and means place where the spirit dwells. So it is believed that both sinister and helpful spirits reside here. The settlers who took up this land soon called the swamp by another name. They called it the Devil's Swamp.
That's a different name.
Just a little bit. After learning of the physical dangers there, such as sinkholes, thorns, quicksand, and thick woods, as well as the spirits that prowl in the darkness. And it can't be surprising to learn that this swamp encompasses all spooky and strange encounters from UFOs to ghosts to scary beasts. More cryptids that have been seen here. One that has been reported is described as a giant pterodactyl-like creature, which makes me think of like the Thunderbird.
Yeah.
Others have reported seeing giant red-eyed dogs who have attacked ponies. Glowing eyes have also been seen in the dark woods. Also, a shaggy ape-like creature has been spotted. So actually, in 1978, a man named Joe DeAndrade saw this creature. So he was walking near Clay Banks, which is a pond in the area. As he turned around, he saw a large, quote, apish and man thing running through the woods. He was rightfully terrified and took off towards the closest road. This sighting apparently prompted a search of the area to try to find the creature, but obviously nothing was found. Then just a few years later, a man named John Baker was out in the woods laying muskrat traps when he saw something similar. So he recalls that he was in the woods laying his traps when he heard something come crashing through the trees. When he turned to look towards the sound, he saw a huge, hairy creature wade into the water and pass him only a few yards away. Baker said that this creature had a horrific scent that accompanied it. And naturally, we have theories as to why the swamp is such a hotbed of paranormal activity. A very bloody and very brutal battle took place here years ago between the new settlers and the native people who lived in the swamp area. It's believed that this battle was so violent and that the history surrounding this area is so dark and violent that it has infused the swamp with a sort of evil force, that there are vengeful spirits here looking for revenge. So another strange and unexplained thing that has found its home in these woods is the Dayton Rock. Once residing in the riverbed of the Taunton River in Berkeley, Massachusetts, this 40-ton, 5-foot, 1.5-meter high, 9.5-foot, 2.9-meter wide, and 11-foot, 3.4-meter long boulder was moved to the Freetown State Forest. What makes this boulder strange, other than its massive size, is the fact that it is covered in various mysterious petrographs, drawings of figures, geometric shapes, and alleged cryptid writing. None of the weird markings on the rock have been identified, and no origin is known. Some have speculated that maybe it came from an older tribe in the region, maybe it's from Norse explorers, or maybe it even dates back to the Phoenicians or Chinese. In 1960, Reverend Cotton Mathers, whose name is very much associated with the witch trials, wrote a book called The Wonderful Works of God Commemorated. And in the book, he wrote this about the rock. Quote, among the other curiosities of New England, one is that of a mighty rock, on the perpendicular side whereof by a river, which at high tide covers part of it, there are very deeply engraved, no man alive knows who or when, about 1/4 lines, near 10 feet long, and 1.5 foot broad, filled with strange characters, which would suggest as odd thoughts about them that were fierce before them, as there are odd shapes in that elaborate monument. Hardest thing to read.
Yeah.
But pretty much he's saying that even back in 1690, they had this rock that had all of the weird things on it. So it even predates that. So it just shows how random this rock is with its weird engravings. But literally no explanation for the rock exists or where the hieroglyphics come from. Nothing. But other sources have reported that this rock is now located in a museum at a nearby park called Dayton Rock State Park and is listed on the National Register, the National Register of Historic Places. So I think my best advice for you would be to stay out of the woods.
Yes.
Nothing good seems to come out of this area. It is scary, and I prefer to stay safe. Stay safe. And I will be staying out of the Freetown Fall River State Park.
And we're going to get into one of the things you touched on, and it's truly even worse than you can even ever imagine. That made it sound horrible, but it really is.
I'm actually very interested. All right, Nora?
There were parts of this. Okay, so first
what
of all,
is this?
Lauren was like, oh yeah, you should cover this cult because there's so much information on it, and I'm not going to be able, I might touch on it a tiny bit, but there's so much more, I can't do it justice. And I was like, oh, maybe. I looked into it, and I was like, this is super interesting. It literally is so insane.
I am so excited for this.
So, first of all, Fall River is home to Lizzie Borden. You didn't mention that, right? Did you? Okay. I was like, did I miss it?
Do you know the Lizzie Borden rhyme?
No.
So there's a rhyme that I learned when I was young. It goes, Lizzie Borden had an axe and gave her father 40 whacks. When she saw what she had done, she gave her mother 41.
Yeah.
Or it kind of switches between mother
that's
and
literally what happened, basically. So yeah, if you didn't need another reason to think that this place is twisted, Lizzie Borden is from Fall River, Massachusetts. So there we have that.
Actually, I am surprised I didn't mention that in our little intro to this state.
No, I mean, it's just crazy. I'm like, wow, like what else does this area have? Does this little forest have?
Honestly, that's why I was nervous to do Massachusetts. I was like, this is such a wild state.
It is. And it's not even that big,
it?
like land-wise, which is why it's like, oh my gosh, what is happening over there?
Right. There's something going on up there.
So I'll just start off by saying that according to Anton LaVey's The Satanic Bible, Satanism is based on the belief that human beings are inherently selfish, violent creatures, that life is a Darwinism struggle for survival of the fittest, that only the strong survive and the earth would be ruled by those who fight to win the ceaseless competition that exists in all jungles, including those of urbanized society.
Intense.
So, if you haven't guessed it, we're going to talk about the Fall River Cult, or also known as the Freetown Cult Murders.
Yeah, because like Nora said, I was going to just briefly mention this, and I started to look into it, and I was like, this needs to be its own episode. Like, this cannot be something I just briefly mention. Like, and it's just too much.
It really is. This is the most notes I've ever taken on something.
Ooh, yay!
It's so much. And I got a lot of my stuff from cvlt.com, like cult.com, but with a V.
Okay.
They had really good articles on this, so shout out to them.
Oh my gosh, that sounds like such a fun website.
Yeah, it was crazy. But beginning around the 1960s in the United States, some people wanted to find a sense of belonging. And there was like a whole religious movement going on at the time, and it kind of ranged from Christian, Eastern mystic, other self-help groups that claim to offer a path of self-discovery and higher purpose.
Okay.
I think if you were to ask like older family members, they probably knew someone who was like in a situation that was kind of like a cult, because that time period was just really like
people wanted to find their connections and find where they belonged. And
exactly.
Cults, unfortunately, that's who they like targeted, people who like didn't have their sense of purpose yet.
Exactly.
They're like, join us, you'll have this amazing sense of purpose. Which is not great.
Which is exactly what they did in this cult. They targeted weaker people. It was typically the people you would find in these cults were young and vulnerable people. Almost every case like this, it's like the leader is older, typically a male, and then it's like younger, vulnerable people who just kind of follow it. But these were often strange and sometimes dangerous religious sects, sexed? I can't say that word. No, I'm really insecure.
I think it is just like sex.
I know. Whatever.
Well, now that you have to like say it and sound it out, it sounds wrong.
Yeah. Whatever. Segments, which led to the rise of the counter cult movement. And actually, Christian fundamentalists were a part of this. That's what I found in my research. Basically, it was branches of the Christian religion doing their own thing and, you know, branching off and being their own segment of it.
Their own sects.
Exactly. With more women joining the workforce, it meant that an increasing number of teenagers were left by their own devices and didn't have a mom at home all the time to tell them how to act. In today's society, that's normal. Like, you have to kind of grow up and do the right things. But at the time, it was a huge societal shift. So the public had this huge fear of their children falling victim to joining the wrong crowd or cult.
Yeah.
So within the social context and mix of several other factors, a cultural phenomenon known as the Satanic Panic was born. It was fueled by religious fanatics, some psychiatrists, like, you know, kind of fueling the fire, and most heavily, the biggest impact was the tabloid media. Because remember, before you could read like BuzzFeed articles, it was tabloids all along the counter at like drugstores. So basically, it's like the religious fanatics lit the fire, and then the tabloid media made it like a freaking fast-spreading wildfire of this panic. It was also claimed that a vast satanic criminal network existed throughout the country. Organized devil worshippers were responsible for any number of heinous acts, including kidnapping, child abuse, animal mutilation, rape, torture, human sacrifice, and cannibalism. Which, according to the media, was taking place under our very noses.
Oh, of course.
Everywhere.
Of course.
You can never be safe. At its height, the Satanic Panic was basically a modern-day witch hunt. Otherwise rational people got caught up in this mass hysteria based on nothing more than the twisted fantasies of, you know, the sick people who talked about it.
Yep.
Eventually, the leading criminal experts were discredited and public perceptions would shift into a more rational direction, but by then the damage was already done. I mean, how can you recover from being accused of being in a satanic cult or any cult, you know?
Yeah, I mean, even if it wasn't true, you're still going to have that, like, label on you, you know?
Exactly. So these satanic criminal conspiracies sounded crazy, like they sound crazy now, and most stories were bogus, but not all. As it turns out, the claims were not entirely false, and there were, in fact, criminal cults comprised of self-proclaimed Satanists active during this period. And one of these cults, which what we're going to talk about today, is in Massachusetts, and by the late 1970s, it was definitely spreading around the country, like I said. But the U.S. faced recession, unemployment, rising crime rates, and the once growing and lively textile city of Fall River, Massachusetts was hit particularly hard. Factories closed, buildings were abandoned, and the downtown area had become a total wasteland. And it was basically the perfect environment for drugs and prostitution to take over the area.
Yeah.
Along with the chaos, a series of murders took place between October 1979 and February 1980. 2 young women, both local prostitutes, had been bound, raped, and tortured to death. The investigation into the brutal killings resulted in a tabloid frenzy, and headlines in the media at the time pointed fingers at the Satanic Panic. The body of the first victim was found on October 13th, 1979. Doreen Levisk, a 17-year-old runaway from New Bedford, was discovered behind the Demon Vocational High School.
17?
Yeah.
You said? Dang.
A runaway prostitute.
Ugh.
Yeah. Her wrists had been bound with fishing line, and there were signs of sexual torture. She had also been stabbed in the head several times and suffered multiple skull fractures. Police discovered that the young girl had been prostituting herself and initially suspected one of her clients of committing the murder, which would be the most common suspect.
Yeah.
Because...
And side note, would it have been considered, like, so you know how nowadays it's called sex work? Was it called prostitution at that time?
That's what it was called.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm using that word, by the way.
Just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, that's what it was at the time. That's what all the articles say, because it's referring to like the 70s. But yeah, that's not like a word now, you know? Yeah. But yeah, that would be the most common suspect.
Yeah.
Because it's like you're a strange guy picking up a sex worker.
17-year-old.
Yeah, underage. But this time, it was not the case. The county medical examiner determined that the killing was likely committed by multiple people.
Oh.
Yeah, and forensic evidence also just suggested a ritual element of the crime. They saw signs that it was a possible death by stoning.
Oh.
Yeah. The trail of blood left behind would soon lead the investigation in a different, much darker direction.
Darker than stoning?
I know.
Oh.
It's crazy. It's a whole thing. A month after the discovery of Doreen Levisk's battered corpse, a 44-year-old man named Andy Malteus visited the Fall River police station. He was there to file a missing persons report for his girlfriend, a 22-year-old prostitute named Barbara Raposa, who, like Levisk, worked the Bedford Street area. Andy told police that he feared for his girlfriend's safety. He then mumbled something under his breath about a satanic cult and claimed to have information relating to the Levisk murder. But with no other leads in the case, they decided to formally interview Andy and see if his crazy claims were true.
Okay.
By all accounts, Andy was mentally unstable, so his accusations or ideas of who was behind the murders were taken with a grain of salt. He was actually a convicted pedophile, sexual sadist, and violent rapist, this Andy fella.
Oh.
And he was a self-proclaimed devout Christian.
Huh.
He told police, "Jesus Christ is my personal Lord and Savior," and he held up a small Bible to prove his faith. He
because
said,
that proves your faith.
I know.
Not your actions,
Exactly.
but the fact that you have a small pocket-sized Bible.
Yeah. But then he said, once I worshiped Satan, now I worship Jesus. And police were like, well, I'm glad we're starting off the interview talking about that.
Right.
Like, why would you even bring that up?
Yeah, actually.
According to his statements, Andy and his girlfriend Barbara were practicing Satanists at the time of her disappearance. Doreen Levisk was also involved with a group prior to her murder.
Interesting.
Yeah. Andy claimed to have no direct knowledge of the crime, but told police that he believed the cult to be responsible. The story seemed far-fetched and was received with skepticism, but Andy was insistent. He offered to arrange a meeting with 2 other cult members who, he was sure, had more direct information related to the case. A few days later, police were introduced to Karen Marston and Robin Murphy.
Okay.
These two, oh my goodness. Okay, so Karen was a 20-year-old single mother. Like many of her peers who worked Fall River's red light district, she was a runaway and drug addict. Police accounts described her as nervous and emotional. Robin Murphy was the exact opposite, cold, deliberate, and calculated. The younger of the two, she was only 17 at the time. Like, where are your parents? That's what I don't get about this. It's like, at the end of the day, where are your parents?
Would it be the whole thing where, like, the moms are now working and the dads were still working, like, you know, out of the house?
I feel like even with that, like, you still have to account for your kids, you know?
Yeah, I get that.
So it's just so weird. But not only was Robin a prostitute, she was also an aspiring pimp.
Oh.
She was, at 17.
Oh.
She was a very tough, like, street kid. She was super smart with, like, a very strong personality, which is, like, it could either be really good or if you don't use it for the right reasons, it's bad. Yeah. But it reminds me of, like, a dictator. The way she acts, like, very smart, but, like, very controlling.
Like, very calculating.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And especially for her age, being able to, like, have the power that she had in this little group was just crazy. The girls were open about their relationship as roommates and lovers. So Robin and Karen were lovers and lived together.
Okay.
Their connection to Andy, however, was vague. They knew him from around. According to later testimony, Robin claimed that he actually had been sexually abusing her since she was really young, which is super sad. But throughout the interview, Robin remained silent, studying the officers and occasionally scowling at her friend. Karen did all the talking. At first, she was rambling on about different stuff, but during the interview, she eventually broke down in tears and told police Carl Drew killed Doreen Levisk. So, Carl Drew. There's so many different characters in this.
I know. We need a little, like, family tree.
I know. Carl Drew was a 26-year-old pimp with a violent reputation who ran his business out of the Bedford Street District.
What I think is so wild is when you hear the age of these people, like 26. I am 28.
I know.
You know?
I know. It's so. I was thinking that when I was researching
this.
It's
wild.
I know.
Like, so young.
So young. And it's like, you know, at one point of your life, you're like, 26 sounds like an adult. But now it's like, you still have a lot to learn. I'm 26, and I feel like I'm not old enough to be... I mean, I would never do that, but you see what I'm saying?
Yes,
like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Carl was originally from he was already all over police's radar. He was originally from New Hampshire, and he had been raised on a small farm. In later interviews, he would speak about a childhood marked by hard labor and physical abuse. So in his case, he probably left home because of the issues in his childhood.
Which makes sense.
Yeah. One cruel story involved his alcoholic father tying a rope around his ankles and lowering him down a well to remove a cluster of dead rats.
Oh my God. Ugh. Ew. Have you ever seen a rat king?
No. It
makes me so incredibly uncomfortable. When you get a chance and people, like, listening to this, look up Rat King.
King?
Yeah, we'll look it up after. It's literally a picture that makes me so uncomfortable. So when you say, like, a clump of rats, that's all I can picture, and I really hate it. I'll show you. I really hate it.
I've seen the rats in D.C. that are the size of
Oh my God, a cat.
Yeah.
Yeah, those things are wild.
One time one ran in front of me, like right in front of me. I almost stepped on it, and I screamed.
They're so gross.
Yeah. But Carl eventually ran away from home at only 14.
Oh my God.
Yeah. He found his place among Fall River's criminal underground, and he hung out with bikers, drug addicts, sex workers. That's just who he joined. And that was very common, like a very common story for the people who lived or worked in the red light district there. Carl also had a direct connection to Doreen. He was her pimp. Yep. Unfortunately, there was nothing to link him to the murder beyond the fact that they, like, hung out in the same circles.
Yeah.
But Karen was pressed for more details and even offered police offered witness protection for her cooperation, but she gave no further information.
Dang.
On a final statement, promising that if she were to turn up dead, it would be Carl Drew who was responsible.
Ooh, I hate when people, like, give statements like that. It's
Yeah.
so eerie.
It really is.
And
Or
'cause
like
9 times out of 10, something happens.
I was listening to something recently. I think it was called like The Nightmare Neighbor. I forget what it's a podcast, and this woman like literally put a note in her pocket, in her wallet, that said, if I'm dead, it's this person.
Ooh, that gives me goosebumps. Like, I
Yeah.
don't like thinking about that.
I know.
That's so creepy.
I know. Detectives from the Fall River Major Crimes Division would remain in contact with Karen in the weeks that followed, hoping to learn more about the Fall River cult. And the more they looked into this cult, the more details unraveled about the group of pimp and sex work practitioners who were also Satanists.
Of course.
Yeah. As it turned out, Fall River's criminal underworld were being basically controlled by a cult of devil worshippers who took their directives from people above them. Back in the interview room, Karen told police while crying, "I'm a good person. I believe in God." So basically, she did fear for her life, and she said that Carl Drew was the devil and told police of the consequences she expected for her betrayal.
Oh.
Karen claimed that Carl organized his prostitution ring as a satanic coven and that he ruled with an iron fist. He would tell the girls, Satan will take his toll, like threatening them in order to control and manipulate them.
Oh, I don't like that.
I don't either. For more Christian fearful like Karen, she thought that her body would be sacrificed and cast into the flaming pits of hell for eternity for like things that she had done on earth, but now she was like super scared of Carl. Accompanied by Carol Fletcher, who was another young area prostitute with ties to the cult, Karen took police to the nearby Freetown State Forest.
Oh.
It was here that the girls claimed that the cult held their nocturnal gatherings. Okay, literally, if you're willing to go into a forest at night and do that sort of stuff, you are the devil.
That sounds terrifying.
Horrible way to spend your night.
I don't even like walking in like a well-lit neighborhood at night.
Yeah, same.
No way would I want to go into a dark forest.
I know.
No.
That is known for being super creepy.
Right? Let's go into this evil forest at night.
As they passed by an algae-covered pool of water, Karen was petrified. This is where she told them that Carl Drew would dump her body if she talked to police. And she said that she was scared that Carl would like do things to her, like inject battery acid into her veins and offer her soul to Satan.
Oh my god.
Like not normal things that people should be worrying about at that age
typically.
ever. That wasn't the only act of violence that Carl would threaten upon the girls. Another girl who worked for Carl, named Cookie, her birth name was Mildred Jukes, later told police of Carl's planned retribution against women who had gotten her arrested for prostitution. He said that he was going to kill anyone who tried to, like, tell on him or whatever. Detectives were fairly certain that they had their guy, but they still wanted to get Karen talking more so they could build their case. Mm-hmm. Police came to find out that Carl was not the only dangerous individual in her life. As it turned out, Robin Murphy, her teenage friend and lover, also had a dark side. A very, very dark side. Even before her introduction to the circle of Satanists, she was described by those around her as being psychologically unstable and prone to violence.
Oh. Very opposite from those who light up a room.
I know. Robin was far from being an unwilling participant or minor player, and soon police would realize that Robin was like a huge figure in this cult. Before long, a third body had been discovered. On January 26, 1980, the frozen and bloodied corpse of Barbara Raposa was found in the woods behind an abandoned printing factory. So that's Andy's girlfriend.
Yeah, I was going to say, I know that name.
Yep.
Oh, no.
Yep. Her wrists were tied together with fishing line. She had been sexually assaulted, and her skull had been crushed with a rock. So fishing line is used throughout at least 2 of the 3 murders so far.
Oh.
Yeah.
Is that how they were able to connect it, or?
I think just by how
like
brutally
just other things too.
How brutal it was too.
Oh.
Yeah. Another local prostitute and Satanist dabbler was killed in cold blood, and her murder was so similar to the other 2. So that's like a main reason, that they were able to connect it because of how like not just the wire, but just how the murder was done.
Yeah.
Police had a head start in their investigation with the Levisk case, which had given police a glimpse into the strange and shadowy underworld that existed in the city. It also gave them a circle of potential suspects, and some of them were already under investigation, so it didn't take long to connect the dots from there. The first to be interviewed in connection with Barbara's murder was Andy, her boyfriend, who was the last known person to see her alive.
It's always the husband or the boyfriend.
Oh, yeah. A nervous Andy denied any knowledge of the crime. However, a few days later, he contacted police after receiving details of the murder in a psychic dream.
Huh.
Like, really specific details.
Huh.
So police were like, we've played this game before. So they played along and brought Andy to the crime scene, allowing him to describe what he had seen in his dream. It turns out that Annie knew exactly where the woman's body had been discovered, its positioning, time of death, method of killing, and various other details that were not made public.
Yeah, so things that the general public wouldn't know, but the killer probably would.
I know. And it's like, I know I say this every episode, but how dumb are you? Like, why would you give that many details?
But Nora, it came from a psychic dream.
I know. True. So this psychic testimony didn't give Andy the reaction he was expecting.
Yeah, duh.
He soon found himself in handcuffs, on his way to the police station, and being charged with murder. In the days following his arrest, the investigation received even more assistance from an unexpected source, Robin Murphy. She contacted police and offered to testify against Andy as a witness of the murder. A witness.
A witness of the murder.
Yes. She says that not only was she present for Barbara's murder, she was also present for the killing of Doreen Levisk. And she agreed to turn the state's evidence in for that case as well. She just happened to be there for a lot.
Convenience.
Yeah. In exchange for her cooperation, she brokered a deal where she was placed in protective custody and granted immunity in both murders.
See,
so annoying.
That's good that you're getting the information, but I think things like that with immunity, I think that's bullshit.
Yeah, it should be like, hey, instead of giving you the death penalty, you'll just get life in jail.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
so annoying.
Granting immunity is not fair.
Yeah. So the story she gave police and later repeated in court was that Andy had killed Barbara after discovering that she had been cheating on him with another man. Robin claimed to have been with both of them on the night of the murder. They had all been partying together while driving around the city, and at some point the couple started arguing. Andy then parked his car behind the abandoned factory, dragged Barbara out, and raped her. She cried for help and he proceeded to beat her, which first with his fists and then with a rock. Afterwards, he drove off with Robin, leaving his bloodied girlfriend to crawl away. So this did not make Robin look innocent, because why did she not go to the police sooner? She claimed that Andy had threatened her with the same fate if she had talked.
I mean, believable, though,
yeah.
you know? Mm-hmm. Like, he seems like a very violent and scary guy.
Yeah, so she was scared.
Supposedly.
Supposedly. Although the forensic evidence was near identical to the Barbara Raposa case, according to Robin, there was no direct connection between the two murders, except for the fact that she happened to be there for both. She later told police that the killing of Doreen was an offering of the soul to Satan. And of course, Robin made herself look innocent in this situation too, and told police that Carl Drew was entirely behind it.
Of course.
Robin claimed that Doreen had recently left Carl's pimp circle, which is what they called it, with the intention of working the streets on her own. But unfortunately, leaving the group was not easy. So what had happened was, apparently, when Doreen tried to leave, Carl tracked her down and forced her into his car. Robin Murphy, Karen Marston, and a man named Willie Smith, who is Carl's friend and a fellow Satanist, came along for the ride. Carl threatened Doreen, telling her that she couldn't afford to work the streets alone, and backhanded her across the face. They pulled behind the school, and the two men took the girl under some bleachers out of sight. Robert and Karen stayed in the car, of course. Yeah. Robin and Karen. According to her initial statement, Robin heard no screams and claimed to see nothing. After a while, the men returned without Doreen, and the four of them drove away. When asked what happened to her, Carl replied, "You don't want to know." Robin's version of events may have been plausible if Doreen had been quietly smothered or strangled, but the testimony did not match up with the forensic evidence left behind, which painted an extremely violent picture of sexual assault, torture, and a very bloody death. So that pretty much makes it impossible for Robin to not hear anything, to not know anything. It's one thing if she was like, yeah, I heard stuff, but I was so scared to say anything. But she was just saying that she didn't hear anything.
Yeah.
So police did not believe that. Robin went as far as to tell police that she wasn't even sure if Doreen had been murdered that night because she didn't see or hear anything.
So you drive with a girl who gets carried off, and then you leave.
Exactly.
What did you think? That they set her off to a picnic?
Exactly.
Like, what?
I know. So that happened, and police were like, whoa, like, what?
Yeah.
Robin Murphy wasn't the only cult member talking to police at the time. Since her initial interview, Karen Marston continued to stay in touch with detectives working on the case. It's generally believed that she was present for both murders, though her recollections would sharply contrast with Robin's version of events.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I believe Karen's more once you hear them.
Okay.
Karen maintained that Carl Drew was the cult figurehead behind the killings, and she pointed to Robin as also playing a direct leading role. In particular, according to Karen, she had instructed all of those present to take part in the mutilation of Doreen and Barbara's bodies, possibly for ritual purposes, but more likely to keep their silence by directly involving them in crimes. So, unfortunately, Karen Marston was considered an unreliable witness due to her drug use, erratic behavior, and unwillingness to testify in court. So her statements were basically treated as gossip, which is sad.
That is really sad.
So police were clear, though. They were like, it's not that we doubt your claims. It's just that we can't do anything with them because you're not reliable, which is just sad.
That sucks.
Yeah.
Like, that's really unfortunate.
It is. And she seemed to get worse with each meeting, Karen, that is.
Yeah.
By the time of her final interview, when she was on the verge of an emotional breakdown, and she thought that she was going to be the next person murdered for sure.
I mean, I can see why she's terrified.
Yeah. But this paranoia was not for nothing because she was reported missing on February 9th, 1980.
No.
Yeah.
Oh.
2 months later, a grisly discovery was made in the nearby beach town of Westport. While clearing a parcel of land near Devil Pond, a man stumbled across the top half of a human skull. Police arrived on the scene and conducted a more detailed search of the area. They turned up the decaying carcasses of 3 cats, sheep bones, and clumps of human hair. They also found some jewelry, a high-heeled shoe, and pieces of torn pieces of a woman's sweater.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Police determined that the skull belonged to Karen. Soon after, a woman named Maureen Sunny Sparta contacted police and named Robin Murphy as Karen's killer. The inner cult killings had gone too far. Sunny was a former prostitute who lived in the Harbor Terrace housing projects near Fall River's waterfront. She hosted a number of satanic gatherings in her own apartment and acted as something of a den mother figure to the young prostitutes, runaways, and drug users who hung out there. She was also Robin's ex-lover. According to her...
How many ex and current lovers does Robin have?
I know, so many.
Jeez.
Yeah. Robin had admitted to the murder during a phone conversation to her. Carol Fletcher, who accompanied Karen when she took police on a tour of the Freetown State Forest a few months earlier, had also come forward with information. She claimed that Robin and Carl were responsible for the murder. Drew's other friend, Carl Davis, was a pimp who operated out of both Fall River and near Providence, Rhode Island. Basically, she said that all of those people were involved in the killing. As part of her witness protection agreement in the Barbara Raposa case, Robin was relocated to Dallas, Texas, where she would stay with a friend until Andy went to trial. Following the accusations that connected her to Karen's murder, a warrant was issued for her arrest and she was immediately brought back to Fall River.
Oh.
Yeah. Both the Carls were also indicted and placed under arrest. They weren't hard to track down because both of them were actually in jail at the time on unrelated charges.
Oh my God.
Real winners.
Jeez.
During her interrogation, Robin Murphy broke down and told police everything. Well, sort of everything.
Yeah.
Like, it's a truth that evolved throughout the whole rest of the story.
Of course it did.
But Karen had become too much of a liability, and like I said, she wasn't reliable. Robin said that because of that, she was a witness to the killing of Doreen and had rumored to have gone to the police, so Carl Drew decided the fate. With the help of Carl Davis, he forced Robin to take part in the murder as an act of loyalty to the cult, according to Robin. According to her statements, Robin was made to drag Karen from the car and pull out her hair.
Oh.
This was followed by a ritual stoning by Carl, Robin, and a few others who were there.
That reminds me a lot of Handmaid's Tale.
Yeah, definitely. They then pretty much just did other horrible stuff to horrible stuff to Karen.
Mm-hmm.
While Robin was there in a trance-like state and under the direction of Carl, she followed up by slitting Karen's throat. Yeah. The frenzied post-mortem, defilement would reach its climax because Drew carved an X into Karen's torso and began to speak in tongues, offering her soul to the devil.
Ugh.
He then dipped his thumb into her blood and made an X on Robin's forehead. Robin then performed other gross things that I won't get into, but they were doing real Satanist stuff to the body. So Carl Drew made Robin perform sex acts on the headless cadaver before it was dumped into the woods, doused in gasoline, and burned in ashes.
Oh my God.
And then they kicked her on her head around the forest. Apparently, 2 detectives from Fall River's Major Crimes Division managed to witness one of the group's black masses held in Sonny Sparata's apartment firsthand. I know, I was I couldn't figure it out, but I'm are they hiding and watching through a window? They were secretly watching it, and Sonny had arranged it for them to see.
That's wild.
Yeah. So Sonny said, "We pray to Satan, we chant, we try to conjure him." So that happened.
Oh my God.
And then they start saying...
That would honestly probably be kind of scary to watch.
Yeah. They do a satanic chant. They go in a circle and do a satanic chant.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say it because I'm not trying to conjure
don't
Satan.
Say it. Please don't say anything.
Yeah. So the black mass that these 2 detectives kind of snuck into wasn't even super eventful. And by that, I mean that there were no sacrifices.
Mm-hmm. Just conjurings.
Exactly. So Sonny denied any knowledge of human sacrifice, but admitted that there were other types.
Yeah.
So to get a little bit into that, the warm blood from the animals sacrificed would be used in mock baptisms and poured over the heads of the gathered congregants. During the course of these rituals, it's claimed that the participants lost consciousness or spoke in tongue. Then Satan would appear in a form and they would feel his presence, and sometimes he would take possession of one of them.
Oh my gosh.
So creepy. I have goosebumps. It's so creepy.
Yeah.
Sonny then said that you can tell when Satan is there because some people even let him speak through them, when they take him over. And it's not human language. It's random tongue that is super hard to fake. It's complete possession that you can't make yourself do.
Oh my gosh.
Later on, in a later court testimony, Robin makes similar claims. She said that in addition to everything Sonny said, the use of a skull and substance she believed to be human blood was used. She claimed to have attended 10 of these cult gatherings between October and February of 1979 to 80, including 2 where Doreen and Karen were killed. Yeah. So bad. Later on in police interviews, Carl Drew told them, "I worship him like you worship God."
Oh. If that's your religious belief, that's fine. But it's creepy because it's him and he's so bad.
And don't hurt anyone to do it.
Anything. Exactly.
Blood sacrifice also plays an important role. They kill every 30 or so days on a full moon, and it's a ritual. And they offer the victim as sacrifice to Satan.
What if the victim doesn't want to be a sacrifice?
Then it's too bad. It's too bad. This was just another claim, though, by the cult members, so it's unclear how true this was or how close they followed it. But you never know.
Yeah.
The details of the Satan worship would come up repeatedly throughout the trials, and the prosecution decided it would only complicate the proceedings if they explicitly connected the 3 murders to a broader conspiracy.
Mm-hmm.
Throughout the investigation, police heard numerous references to the forest, the Freetown State Forest.
The dark, evil, cursed forest.
Exactly. So this is where almost all of the group's activity was centered. We're not going to get too much into it since Lauren covered it really well.
Thank you.
You're welcome. But that just goes to show these people were in that forest doing crazy things. There's no way there's not some bad juju in that forest.
Oh, yeah.
Crazy. The trials of Andy, Carl, Robin, and the other Carl were a media circus. Headlines screamed of satanic rites, sexual torture, and occult murder. The police, in turn, remained unconvinced that these individuals had acted alone. Many believed that these 4 individuals were only the tip of an iceberg and a dangerous cult was still active in the area. Andy was the first to stand trial. In January 1981, he was convicted in the first-degree murder of Barbara Raposa and given a life sentence without the possibility of parole. Check.
Mm-hmm.
Much of the case against him was based on witness testimony of Robin, which is kind of sketchy because, like, it's Robin.
Yeah. Yeah.
With local media, like, totally wrapped up in everything happening, it was pretty much impossible to hold a fair trial for Robin.
Yeah.
So,
because you're not going to be able to find, like, impartial jurors.
Exactly. Or the Carls.
Yeah.
So they had to move the trials to Worcester. Worcester, thank you. I always say that wrong.
That's where Joe used to live.
I know.
Yeah, I know. It looks like Worcester.
It does.
And he's like, it's Worcester.
Worcester.
And I'm like, no, it's Worcester. But yeah, no, we know everyone. It's Worcester.
Worcester.
You got to say the A at the end. Worcester.
There's no A in the word, but we'll just pretend there is. Just saying, Joe.
I just copy how Joe says it.
I know, right? Robin Murphy's lawyer convinced the court that his young client had been under the powerful influence of the Satanic Cult at the time of Karen's murder, along with allowing her plea to the lesser charge of second-degree murder in exchange for her testimony against her co-defendants.
And this was Robin?
Yeah. So what happened was that the immunity deal she struck up with the district attorney's office held, and she received no additional charges in connection with Doreen or Barbara's killings. But she received a life sentence with the possibility of parole for, the other killing.
Okay, so they got her that way.
Exactly.
Okay, good.
So after spending 24 years behind bars, she was released on June 10th, 2004.
I'm sorry.
I know. However, she violated her parole conditions and was returned to prison 7 years later. She's currently serving her time in a maximum security prison in Massachusetts. It didn't say how much longer she has, but dang, I know.
My gosh, she shouldn't have.
I know. The case against Carl Davis fell apart completely. He was the lesser talked about Carl.
Yeah.
He never stood trial for his alleged role. However, the following year, he was arrested for assaulting Sunny Sapara with a deadly weapon.
Oh.
Yeah. Apparently, he beat her when she was pregnant, stabbed her, and yeah.
Oh my God.
He served 7 years and is now free. Isn't that insane?
A really upstanding person of the community.
I know. Carl Drew would go down as the guiding hand for the Fall River Cult Murders. There were tons of character witnesses, and it was established that he was feared by everyone. He had a felony record. He was definitely a killer based on his involvement in everything.
Yeah.
He actually has an ex-girlfriend named Leah Johnson who claimed that Carl admitted to her that he had killed a girl, along with a few other people.
Yeah, definitely the person you want to date.
Exactly. So Carl was convicted in first-degree murder of Karen Marston's death and is serving a life sentence at the MCI in Shirley, Massachusetts, with no possibility of parole.
Jeez.
And he actually has supporters.
Of course.
Yeah,
of course.
I know.
That doesn't surprise me at all.
I know. And they are petitioning for the Massachusetts governor to review his case. How annoying is that?
If anything, review the case and give him more years.
Exactly. If anything, he should be horrible things happen to him.
Yes.
He's so horrible.
I love what Morbid says. Well, they'll be like, I hope he stubs his toe every day for the rest of his life. I hope he always bites his tongue when he's eating.
It's so true. It's like that Action Bronson song that's I don't know. Action Bronson has this song that it's I hope you get a paper cut on your thumb. I hope you, like, all these things in his song, and it's just so good.
Is that the song I'm thinking of? Because there's another one called Bad Day, and it's like, I hope that the last page of your 800-page novel is missing.
No, I love
oh my
that,
gosh,
though.
It's a really funny one. It's like every bad thing, like, I hope your keys fall down a sewer drain.
Yeah, that's how this song is. Yeah, I love it. These convictions had proved to be a legal nightmare that continues to haunt the city, like, all the way to today.
Dang.
Allegations of witness tampering, falsified information, insufficient counsel, legal right violations, police misconduct, all sorts of things were kind of, like, pointed the finger at. It's still unclear to this day, like, what actually is true. But that's kind of where we're at. So, in conclusion...
This is like a formal paper.
There's so much stuff. So Robin later said on a parole board, she said that, I believe Carl Drew was guilty of killing Karen and many other women. I believe he belongs in jail, but I also knew justice wasn't taking place, so I made up the whole story. She said that later. She said that she was not actually present for Barbara's murder, admitted to fabricating the testimony that led to Andy's conviction and retribution of sexually abusing her. So actually a number of other witnesses recanted their statements too, saying that they were under police pressure. But honestly, I don't know.
Wow.
I don't know. Yeah. So
and
literally,
there's literally
it's such a
no
mess.
way to know because each person's like account of what happened is so different.
Exactly. It's a mess. But Paul Carey, a detective from Fall River Major Crimes Division who worked on the case, had his own story. He said that he believed that Robin was the real ringleader, not Carl Drew, and that Doreen was murdered because Robin was also in love with her and became jealous when Doreen started seeing Carl Drew. So they think that everything branches out from, like, Robin's love.
I mean, it does kind of sound like she had a major hand in a lot of this stuff.
For sure. And everywhere you look, whose name is involved? Robin's. They believe that, this person believes that Robin killed Barbara because Barbara was in love with Andy.
Dang.
Robin admitted that she and Barbara had been previously lovers, and I believe Robert killed Andy because of the 2 previous murders. Andy was at the scene of those murders, and I believe Robin knew that she was the weak link and might get them convicted. So, if the Fall River Cult, if it really did exist, because people are even doubting that it did, I think it did, but if it did, it seems to have been relatively small and an informal group that consisted of maybe a dozen people, which I believe.
Yeah.
It may have been used by some people to connect with other street kids, runaways, outcasts, and others as a means to consolidate their small criminal, like, group. All seem to have an interest in practicing evil through devil worship. The details of the 3 killings that were attributed to the group are murky at best, if not entirely unconvincing. So it's hard to know if they were actually cult murders or just crazy people who tried to, like, fall back on that.
Wild.
But this became one of the craziest criminal cases to come out of this area since Lizzie Borden. And that happened a century earlier.
Dang.
So yeah.
Good job.
Thanks.
I knew it was going to be a wild case, but I didn't know it was going to be that wild.
It's insane. It's so hard to believe that happened.
You covered it very well.
Thank you.
Because I just, like, looked at, like, an article or two and I was like, this is so much information.
There was so much. Oh my gosh. It was crazy.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I don't know how you kept every, like, 900 people in the story straight.
I think I got so invested that it's like, it was so easy to remember who was who, you know?
Oh my gosh.
But yeah.
Wow.
It's cool that we got cases that connected.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I like
when
the
that
order
happens.
we did it too.
Yes. Yes, I do too. Well, thank you for listening to Massachusetts. This was wild. This was really fun.
Yeah. I love this one. I mean, I don't love what happened, but I'm just saying, like, the research was crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I knew Massachusetts was going to be weird. I think a lot of people figure Massachusetts is going to be weird.
Yeah. Agreed.
Joe said he was very excited for this episode.
Nice.
All right. Well, thank you so much for listening to us. Please find us on all social medias at A Scary State Podcast.
Make sure to email us your scary stories. Any scary stories you want to share with us.
Any
email
at all.
them. Yes. Email them to ascarystatepodcast@gmail.com.
Please, please, please go on Spotify and rate us. Give us 5 stars. Do it on Apple Podcast and iTunes and all the places you can review us.
Please do it. All right, guys. Sorry, that was my foot. All right, guys, stay scary.
Stay safe.